Hey, and welcome to COMP110 Section 1. This section is taught mostly asynchronously and was developed to be part of the Carolina Away program. We've learned that many of you are actually on campus this semester though. And so we're going to be doing what we can to offer in-person facilities and experiences, even though the content of the course, the lessons for you, will be taught outside of a classroom. More on that in just a bit. And for those of you who are joining us remotely from international locations, we welcome you and we're excited to have you in this course. We'll talk a little bit more as the semester goes on about the facilities we have to support you through this semester. So let's jump right into what you can expect to get out of today's lesson. Well, first we're going to talk about what programming and this course is all about. Are you in the right course? And many of you are not computer science majors. In fact, most of you are not, which is an interesting thing that people are surprised by when they first take COMP110. What are the instructional expectations and workload expectations you'll experience through the semester? And is this a good fit with your schedule? We'll talk a little bit about computer science and some very fundamental concepts towards the end. And then there will be a little bit of homework for you to work on moving into the weekend. I'm going to try and keep this video less than the amount of time that we have in lecture, an hour 15, so that you have time to start perusing the course material and getting started with some of the assignments that we need you to make progress on before next week. So what are the objectives of this course? Well, this is primarily an introductory programming course where you're going to learn the fundamentals of what it means to write computer programs and instruct the computer to carry out your wishes and move through workloads that you want it to do on your behalf. And we're going to be focused on an application area of data science. Data science is a blossoming field that's become very prevalent in many other fields. It's exciting because it's not just one field in isolation. It's programming, it's statistics, and it's all applied in other domains such as geography, geology, astronomy, physics. It's hard to find biology. It's really hard to find a field these days that isn't impacted by data science in some way. And so the concepts that we're going to learn in this programming course are universal to just about every programming language. We'll be focused on the Python programming language this semester, which is one of the most popular in the world today. And you'll leave this course knowing what it feels like to be a programmer. And this is important because if you're considering doing more of this type of work in the future, I want you to have a real sense of what it's like and whether or not you'll enjoy it or not. When I first started teaching this course, I thought, wow, everyone's going to love programming coming out of COMP110. And a lot of people do, but some people don't. And that's okay too. And I think that's valuable to learn now and in your very first programming course rather than a few semesters in. You're going to learn with a real skill in writing programs that analyze data and produce visualizations that allow you to interpret that data and work with it and try and find insights in it. And this is really the bread and butter of basic data science. And this skill applies in just about any modern work environment, whether you're working in a research lab or you're out in industry, if you're working in marketing, if you're doing modern journalism, if you're running psychological experiments. All sorts of data is being collected on orders of magnitude much larger than we ever have in the past. And being able to write programs and software that can analyze that data and work with it is really a superpower. And that's what we hope to instill you with in this course. Additionally, there's this notion of computational thinking, which is thinking like a computer or thinking in a very logical way that could be expressed in a program. And this is a very different kind of thinking than you're probably used to. And this is the part that can make your mind hurt a little bit, but it's actually really fun. And if you enjoy logic and puzzles, I think you'll love programming. When we talk about thinking about algorithms and thinking algorithmically, which is a component of computational thinking, it's really about how do we take some process and break it down into a set of steps that are very well defined, are very specific, and very concrete. Additionally, we're thinking about how to express problems at varying levels of abstraction. And this is a concept that is kind of abstract to learn as you're first encountering computer science. But the analogy that I love to give is when you were a young child, at some point you probably struggled to put your t-shirt on, and you put your arm in your neck hole or your head through an armhole, or it was inside out or things like that. And you really had to like pay a lot of attention to the orientation of your shirt and the steps that you took to correctly put it on. But nowadays, you probably don't think too deeply about these steps, and it's something you take for granted. And this idea that like you can think very deeply and have to learn some new challenging set of steps that once you've learned it, eventually becomes like second nature. It's something that you don't even think twice about, and it rarely ever goes wrong, is the idea of abstraction, where we can say, okay, we're going to write a program that, we're going to think very deeply about this one little capability, but once we've got it, we can reuse that capability in other larger problems and start to build up larger and larger level layers of abstraction or more powerful tools. The last component of this course that you'll gain some exposure to is computation in society, and thinking about what it means to be a responsible computer scientist and to be ethical. We're going to have a series of readings that are not really about the skills that you're developing in this course, and more about how is it that computation is impacting our world? What are some of the problems that people are worried about today? What is algorithmic bias? And how are some of the things that you're doing on your phone and your computer potentially leading to outcomes that you didn't even know, like advertisements following you around when you search for something on one site and all of a sudden you see that product that you were looking for on every other site that you visit. That's a sometimes useful phenomenon, but there can be some nefarious things in there too. Like it's kind of concerning when you didn't search for something. In fact, you may have just set it around your phone and all of a sudden you're starting to see results for that. There's some real ethical concerns that are going on in data science and in computer science that impact the world around us and our lived experiences with these technologies. So we're going to try and introduce you to some high-level readings that give you a sense of a broader picture of computing in society today. So you're probably wondering, how is it that me, Chris Jordan, as a single instructor, how am I going to be able to support all of you? There's 260 of you currently enrolled in this section of the course. Well, the answer is I'm not individually. The real MVPs of COMP110 are the team that I've built up around me and who really run the show and are incredible. I think they're the best undergraduate teaching assistant team at UNC. And this course would be impossible if it wasn't for them. I'll flip to a screen that has all of their headshots in just a second, but we have 46 undergraduate teaching assistants serving COMP110 this fall, and they all have come up from the course. They took this course some number of semesters ago. Some are seniors who took it long ago. Some are sophomores who took it over the summer potentially or last spring. And this course really just wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't be the same. And it wouldn't be great if it weren't for these folks. You're going to love working with them. Primarily when you're working one-on-one with course staff, you'll be working with a fellow undergraduate TA who's very passionate about this material and just loves to help people learn how to program. And in many ways, I think that working directly with undergraduates allows for a better shared means of communication. You'll hear me explain and introduce concepts in lessons and lectures, and sometimes my explanation doesn't really jive with how you're thinking about something or trying to frame it in your mind. And hearing an explanation from some other undergraduate is often what makes that breakthrough, that sort of light bulb moment come to click. This team is really involved in a wide spectrum of the course's operations. They built the website. They help me come up with exercises. They help me write quizzes. They run our office hours. They're doing a ton. And you'll interact with them quite a bit through the semester. Each of you, in a couple of weeks, once the semester sets in, will be assigned 2 specific undergraduate TAs who you can reach out to via a contact form, and they'll be your personal contacts that you can reach out to as you need, and they're sort of your first line of defense outside of office hours. We also have drop-in Zoom hours, and for those of you who are on campus, we're going to have drop-in in-person office hours that you're more than welcome to, and this is one of the ways we're hoping to make a remote course feel a little bit more like an on-campus course, is being able to come in and work with our staff in person. There's no expectation that we're on Zoom when you're doing one-on-one, but for those of you who are remote, we will have a means for you to Zoom in and get support no matter where you are. And we'll be taking some polls here soon to best understand what time zones we need the most coverage in, and what times might be convenient, so that it's not 4 a.m. where you are is the only time you're able to get help. We're open over 40 hours a week for office hours. That is primarily centered around the Eastern time zone, but we will try and be sure that we can accommodate the Carolina Way students and offer you great support. Throughout the week, we'll have small group tutoring available. So you don't need to worry about trying to find a COMP110 tutor. We'll have tutoring built into the course, and it's free. You can come as many nights as you'd like. And these tend to be senior UTAs, undergraduate teaching assistants, who are some of the best at explaining on the whiteboard and really enjoy working in small group settings in a tutoring-like setting. And we'll talk a little bit more about tutoring as we get into the semester. So without further ado, here's the team, or most of them. I think we're missing 3 pictures from this, but a fantastic team, a widely diverse team. And as I said, all of these students came from having taken COMP110 prior and fell in love with it and decided, I really want to work with this course. And so I would love for some of you who do wind up falling in love with programming and computer science to apply to become a UTA after the semester, if that's something that sounds exciting to you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about whether or not you're in the right course. And really the only way you can be potentially in the wrong course is if you have a lot of programming experience. If you don't have a lot of programming experience, or you have none, you're in exactly the right place. There's 0 programming experience expected coming into COMP110. But some experience is okay. If you've taken maybe a course before, or you've done some Coursera self-paced tutorials, or you found some little lessons online somewhere, totally fine. Some experience is okay. If you've been programming for multiple years, and 110 might not be for you, and there is a placement test that you can take to get out of taking 110 and going, if you're a computer science major, going straight to 210. This course really is designed to be an introductory course, starting from the ground up, and moving at a pace that will challenge Carolina students, but is very doable. This is a rigorous introduction to programming, and programming is a skill. You'll hear me say this many times this course, that the only way you get better at it is by spending time doing it, and spending time thinking about it and practicing. It's like learning how to play a new instrument, a musical instrument, like learning a new craft, or learning a new foreign language. It's kind of like all of these things where there's a skill that the only way to get better at it is just to spend time doing it. And so you can expect about 2.5 hours of educational introductory content, like we're having right now, a lecture format, and some lesson format and practice. And then, about 9 hours of work actually programming, or actually trying to understand what it is that programs do without running them, so that you can better appreciate the model that a computer works with. If you're in 17 credit hours this semester, I'm going to strongly encourage you to think deeply about your work-life balance, especially given everything that's going on, this return to campus. I want you to be happy and healthy this semester and not overloaded. And I do frequently worry and hear a lot of stress from students who load up on STEM courses, like 2 lab courses, 4-hour courses that get you to 17 hours. And then one of your 3-hour courses is COMP110. That's a heavy load to bear. And I would encourage you to think about trying to reconfigure your schedule a bit so that you can enjoy life in addition to doing well in all of your classes without falling behind. We'll be teaching this course again in the spring. I think both sections in the spring, my understanding in the current plan is to be in person. I'll be teaching them again. And so there's no rush necessarily. So don't hurt yourself by overcommitting to coursework this fall as we're all kind of coming out of remote learning. So let's talk about the instructional format of this section specifically. I've mentioned it before. This is a mostly asynchronous section. So the only real synchronous time points that we'll have are going to be quizzes and exams and one other opportunity that I'll talk about in just a moment. But most of the course will be asynchronous. It will be there will be fixed amounts of times that you have to complete the asynchronous components. So we'll have things coming out every Tuesday and Thursday. And when we release new lessons, you've got effectively 48 hours to get them submitted. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But when we're introducing new ideas, these ideas will be presented in the form of pre-recorded videos. For the most part, there will be some write-ups that are more like tutorials that you'll read through and work through. But there's no course materials that you need to purchase outside of the class. There's no books or anything like that for this course. We'll provide everything to you for free. And again, the aim is about 2.5 hours of instruction per week and then 9 hours of practice, which that trade-off is pretty common in a STEM course. You typically multiply the number of hours in a STEM course by 3 to get the number of hours you expect to work outside of class on it. So there will be some synchronous points in this course. So this is where the mostly asynchronous comes from. Most of the course will be asynchronous, but there are 5 quiz dates that I'll have on a slide in just a moment that are all synchronous and required. So you really want to be sure that we drop those dates in your calendar and you're ready to be present and prepared on these specific dates. The final exam, in addition, is going to be synchronous. And I'll talk about that date in just a moment. If you are in person, the opportunity that I want to mention to you, because this course is async, if you have the 11 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. time slot available, I would encourage you, and what we might try and do is form little groups and put out a survey to see who would be interested in maybe finding rooms around campus where those of you who are in this section might join in for the live stream of the in-person section. And that's going to have some interactive question and answer components. You'll be able to ask questions remotely if you tune in for that. And this will be recorded as well. So if you can't make the in-person lecture, but you'd still prefer to watch the in-person experience and navigate the course materials that way, that will all be posted to the course site as well. I think this is an interesting opportunity. It's certainly not as ideal as having more seats in the class. The classroom that we're in for section 2 is physically out of seats. There just aren't any more seats that we can add students to. So I think this is maybe the best way to try and get what will feel like having the lecture experience while making the most of being surrounded by other people on campus who might be able to join in on this with you. So what will you be doing in 110? What is this course all about work-wise? What kinds of deliverables are there, and what will you spend your time on? You're going to be preparing for the actual work, right? So in order to learn a new skill, you kind of have to understand the theory of it and what are the big ideas. And so there will be some videos that are assigned. There'll be some, you're encouraged to take notes on those videos, to follow along. I think one of the best things you can do is to actively participate in the videos by when we're writing programs together, following along, writing your programs as we do that. reading the papers that we assign. And most of these are actually chapters of books that are very fascinating books. And really just trying to be actively engaged with the content so that when you're on your own to try and implement your own ideas with exercises and projects, you'll be able to take the concepts we taught you and apply them in new areas. There's participation. So you're asked to follow along with the lecture materials, and it's really important to stay up to date. This is one of my concerns with an asynchronous section, is that we don't want people to fall behind. And so for each lesson, there will be, not this one, but as we move through the semester, every subsequent lesson or video will have some questions on a website called Gradescope that you'll respond to. You'll all be added to the Gradescope site if you haven't already been. You soon will be. So for the next lesson, which I'll talk about, that's the homework for tonight and tomorrow, there will be some questions that you'll see what this is like. It's no big deal. It's some Q&A, multiple choice style questions for the most part. And as we get further into the semester, there will be some where you're uploading diagrams that you draw. There will also be some questions about the readings that we do. And these will be a combination of just checking for understanding of the content of the reading, as well as reflecting on some of the bigger issues in society and philosophizing and thinking about what are the concerns that we're up against in 2021 with all of this technology surrounding us. Practice is the most important component of this course. Practice is how you get better. And there are sort of three modalities that you'll find that you're practicing in most frequently. We're going to do a lot of what's called memory diagramming or environment diagramming. And this is trying to, on pen and paper, draw out what is the current state of the computer. What is it keeping track of in our programs? And the reason we put a lot of emphasis and energy and time into environment diagrams is because if you can produce one and understand what's going on, it makes everything else in programming much, much easier to understand. You have a much better, more sound model for how the computer is actually carrying out your instructions. It's not just some magical black box that some kind of voodoo happens and you don't know what's going on and why your program didn't run the way that you expected it to. With environment diagrams, as you master them, you'll find that many of the subtle bugs you might have made otherwise, you can avoid. Programming exercises are where you'll actually apply the skill of programming, and we'll have these will be broken down into typically a few small problems, and you'll write a program to solve that problem. Our programming exercises are going to kind of come in two flavors. And as we get into a real exercise, I'll talk more about that, and we'll have a write-up that explains this in more detail. But just to give you a brief sense, parts of your exercises you'll be able to get help on in office hours, and we're happy to answer questions. And then like one last problem for typically about 10% of an exercise, we'll ask you to do that on your own without help. We can help you if there's like something very wrong that's preventing your program from running at all. But there'll be an on your own part of these exercises that allows you to demonstrate to us and yourself that for the things that you learned during the practice and the participation prior and coming up with the parts of the exercise that we're happy to help you with as best we can, you took those ideas home and can demonstrate mastery of that concept. And then we'll have some projects that are a little bit more open-ended where you can decide what kind of data analysis you want to do, or what kind of choose your own adventure story you want to make for the person playing your game. And the projects are where you get to be a little bit more creative and have some fun with it. And lastly, the other place where you demonstrate mastery of understanding the concepts that we're teaching in this course, and we want you to go out into the world with when you're done, are through the quizzes that I mentioned and the final exam. The final exam is a common hour exam, meaning both sections will take the final exam at the same time, and it's on Friday, December 3rd at 8 a.m. Quiz dates are synchronous. As I mentioned before, this is very important, so I want to mention it again. you really need to be present and able to take the quiz during this time slot. So from 9:30 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. on the Tuesday or the Thursday that the quiz is scheduled for. The list of dates can be found here. So the first is August 31st, and then we've got 4 more throughout the semester. You need to take at least 4 of these quizzes in order to pass the course. So more on this can be found in the actual syllabus. I don't want to get too hung up on these details, but I would encourage you to just pause the video here, go write down these dates in your calendar. Be sure you don't have hard conflicts. If you're a part of an athletic team that for some crazy reason winds up having 3 of these dates you need to be traveling for, I would highly encourage taking COMP110 in the spring where we can be in person and there won't be those conflicts that arise, because these are important to be there for. These are the dates and the final that are synchronous and that you have to be here for. Every other day is going to be more flexible, where you've got effectively 48 hours to complete what it is that we're looking for, or close to 48 hours. Oops, I've got a slight typo here. So let me fix this real quick. The course website is worth becoming familiar with. And I meant to write a 20 there, or a 21. And let me show you that real quick. So the course website is, let me make this a little bit bigger. 21f.comp110.com. We only use Sakai for a few very specific purposes. Primarily, the readings that you'll do are found on reserves in Sakai. And you don't need to worry about those quite yet, but if you wanted to take a look at them, they should already be there. And otherwise, everything is going to flow through the website for information and for lessons and for things like that. Or Gradescope is where you're going to be submitting your work to. We'll be doing some polling questions in the live lecture. And so if you're considering tuning in for the live stream, you can respond to those. They're not for credit. They're for just checking your understanding, so that there's no penalty or benefit in doing that. But we'll do some polling during that live stream as well if you'd like to tune in for that instead of these asynchronous videos. Just to give you a quick sense of this website, the itinerary is where you're going to find what you need to be focused on next, in addition to what's on the horizon. The resources page is where you can find the syllabus for the course. And the very first lesson is really just reading the syllabus and reading the support page and getting an understanding of what are the expectations in COMP110 of you, what do you need to know, what are the grading policies, things like that. And then after that, there's some course setup that we'll ask you to move through to get your computer ready for writing programs. There's a topics page that is going to have quite a bit of information that you shouldn't know anything about yet. We're going to teach you all of this stuff. But as we're moving through this semester, know that you're going to have the videos, you're going to have your notes. For some things, there will be write-ups and potentially slides that are posted. But there's also this topics page where if you want a little bit more exposure on some idea, you can come in and read more about it. The support page links to or talks a little bit about how you get support one-on-one, how you get to tutoring and things like that. And part of your next lesson will be reading through this. So I don't want to get too into the details there, but we've got tons of support and we really want to make sure that you feel like you've got the wraparound support and are able to get the help you need when you need it in COMP110. You'll read in the syllabus the details of our collaboration policy and honor code in more detail, but I want to talk about this because it is important, and it's especially important given that we're remote on campus, and so what's kosher and okay versus not. And we do take this seriously when it comes to honor code violations with, say, duplicating programs. It's very easy for software to detect excess similarity between two submissions, and we don't want anyone to have to go through honor court. I don't like going through honor court. I don't think anybody does. So let's talk about collaboration policy on graded assignments. For assignments that are graded, such as exercises, projects, quizzes, and exams, there is no acceptable collaboration with peers in the course. And this isn't meant to be punitive. This isn't meant to be, destroying the spirit of camaraderie that exists at Carolina. It's really meant to protect and ensure that you, as an individual, are learning and mastering the concepts that you need to know in order to do well on the quizzes and the final, and in order to be able to write programs after you're done with this course. What we found in the past was that when people did collaborate, typically one of the collaborators got far more out of it in terms of the learning experience than the other person. And more often than not, it was the person with more programming experience who got more out of it than the person with less. So for exercises and projects, work on these individually. And if you need help, come work with us in office hours. As I mentioned, we are open for over 40 hours a week. It's walk-in. I like to say that we beat Uber. You can get an office hours appointment in 5 minutes or less. Typically on days where things are due, you might wait a little bit longer than that, sometimes much longer than that if it's a tough assignment. This is why we encourage you to start early. So what is collaboration? Posting screenshots of your code to GroupMe or other group chats, looking at or sharing or letting someone else look at your laptop, talking about your code in a very step-by-step fashion. It's okay to talk at a high level, or to maybe diagram some things out on like a whiteboard separate from your computers. But if you're like saying, okay, then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, that's probably a little bit too much, and you'll lead to a very similar result or solution. You don't want to copy or share code with common websites such as Chegg or Stack Overflow, Course Hero, and we really encourage you not to ask peers for help, because that puts both of you in a tough position. And again, we have 46 undergraduate TAs, and then we have an awesome graduate TA, Kaki Ryan, and myself, who are here to try and offer the help that will get you past the hump that you're up against. The way that we're going to help you isn't going to give you the answer, because that's not how you learn, but it will help you dig into why it is that something isn't working quite the way that you expect, with the intended result of it making sense and you not having to run into that same type of roadblock again, because you've understand that concept. So for the live in-person lecture, if you are going to tune into those, you will see that we do some live Q&A during that, and those questions come in through Poll Everywhere. For the asynchronous material, this doesn't actually line up. We're going to ask you to come into office hours with your questions or tutoring. But if you are tuning in to the live lecture, I'll talk more about this there. Otherwise, you don't need to worry about this as part of the async group. Additionally, I mentioned that you'll have 2 undergraduate teaching assistants assigned to you, and you'll be able to email them with the questions related to concepts that are happening in lecture. I told you I was going to say this multiple times this semester, and you're going to be sick of it come December, but programming is a practiced skill. Like playing an instrument, writing cursive letters, sports, woodworking, quilting. The way that you get good at a skill is by practicing it individually and just honing your craft. You're not going to become a good programmer by watching someone else do it. You're not going to become a good programmer just by watching me do it when we're working on projects together in lecture. The analogy I love is like, I've watched a lot of Bob Ross paint. And if you don't know who Bob Ross is, I would encourage you to go search YouTube for it after this video. And I've never followed along with Bob Ross, and I'm a terrible painter. I haven't gotten any better. It's purely for entertainment. I didn't develop a skill. The same is true with programming. You've just got to practice. You got to do it
And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes you'll want to bang your head against a wall, but you just keep at it and come to us when you are feeling stuck, and you'll get better. And it's really fun to get better. And it's really an exciting feeling to see your program and your idea come to life. But this is a very different type of course than one that's knowledge-based, where you're trying to acquire a body of knowledge, you're trying to understand many different perspectives. This is a skill-based course, and we're going to be focused on that. In the readings, you'll get some of the general, more broader knowledge and be able to apply that into the course there. But by and large, the bread and butter of this course is a hard skill in programming that I frankly deeply love. We really want you to succeed in this course. Everything that we do in terms of how we design this is really designed for you as a Carolina student to try and set you up for what we hope is the best opportunity and chances of success for learning this skill and being able to write programs. And if you wanted to write more after the class or go on into future computer science classes or information science classes or journalism classes where you're doing data wrangling, if you're doing the data science minor and you're going into upper division classes to fill out that minor, that you'll feel comfortable and you'll feel confident that you can take on problems that right now you're probably wondering, can I actually do this? And the truth is you can. It just takes time and effort. All right. So that sort of brings us to a close on much of the syllabus at a high level. There's far more details in the actual syllabus itself, so you'll be reading through those and becoming familiar with them. But let's talk a little bit about what computer science actually is and how we think of ourselves. This picture here is of Dr. Fred Brooks, who was the founder of the UNC Computer Science Department over 50 years ago. And he's still alive, and I saw him last week, actually. He came to the orientation of our department and is now, I believe, approaching 90 years old. Just an incredible man who became famous originally for the work that he did at IBM. But I think of him more as the work that he's done at UNC to develop computer science as a department and to make it known. I love the way Fred frames what computer science is all about and what are we. Fred likes to claim that computer scientists are toolsmiths. We don't exist to pursue some pure theoretical ideas. We exist to actually build tools for other people to be able to do their jobs more effectively, more efficiently, on larger scales, and so on. So we're building tools for other people as computer scientists. One example of this is our department has a lot of research faculty who are focused on medical imaging analysis, and this is something that has a long history at UNC. And so as modern software is analyzing data that's coming from the images of X-rays and creating 3D or reconstructing 3D models using video of, your airway, or of you've seen perhaps people who have gotten those scans of their babies in vitro, and you can see like the 3D faces reconstructed from video that you can like rotate around and things like that, as well as robots that are able to more successfully navigate inside of your body, which sounds kind of creepy and futuristic and weird, but is something that is being studied at UNC, a self-driving robot for navigating a scope down your throat and into your lungs, such that when humans drive these scopes, which they do and have for many decades, it's hard to not accidentally rub into skin and flesh in your lungs. But with hopefully self-driving scopes, that can be minimized while the doctor is still in control of where it's going and trying to find the issue and the area of concern inside your body. And these are examples of life sciences and medicine and computer science, the tools that we're creating and helping to imagine in that domain. But this exists in every domain, right? Even social media. which feels kind of silly to think of as something that arose from computer science, but it wouldn't be possible without many fundamental concepts in computer science. Those are tools that we've made for people to try and connect with one another and maintain bonds. So Fred has a couple of quotes that I really like, and one that I want to start out with that is highly impactful to me, that I think describes the feeling of being a programmer very well, is this: the programmer, like the poet, works only slightly removed from pure thought stuff. What you'll find in programming is that these ideas live in your head primarily. And the way that you're thinking about solving a problem is oftentimes kind of hard to verbalize at first until you get more comfortable thinking computationally and communicating in that way. But what we're working on is really this sort of abstract material, these thoughts, these structures that we can build in our minds and then try and convey into programs. And so there are some things that, it would be very hard to imagine the equivalent in the real world. Like mini games are a good example of this. So a programmer who's making a game, you can probably think of a game that couldn't exist as a real game in real life and work the same. Like Minecraft takes much longer to do in real life than it does in the game itself. But there are many other examples that you could imagine. She builds castles in the air, from air, creating by exertion of the imagination. What's so fun as a programmer and a computer scientist is that you're able to construct ideas and programs that carry out things that are much more grand and operate at scales far larger than you can even imagine right now. Like, pretty soon you'll be writing programs that can do things hundreds of thousands of times. And yeah, they might be a little bit simple at first, but what else have you ever done in your life where you've said, hey, go do something 100,000 times or 1,000,000 times, and that's happened outside of programs and things like that? But the software that we're able to build and the algorithms that we write and the programs that are produced from this are pretty beautiful and powerful. It's silly to bring up Snapchat in this context, but I'm going to, because I just tried a filter the other day, today, I think actually, where it was a cowboy hat and some hair that was in 3D, and I shook my head, and the hair that was overlaid in augmented reality moved around related to my head, and it's silly, but it kind of blew my mind. And it's like the amount of computational power and ingenuity that actually goes into a filter like that on Snapchat to sort of bring about this fantastical different reality is pretty cool, and something that exists in your pocket on your phone for free that would have been totally mind-blowing even 10-15 years ago. Show that to somebody and they wouldn't have believed you, but go back 50-100 years and it would have been, it's no different than magic. Few media of creation are so flexible, so easy to polish and rework, so readily capable. One of the things that I love about computer science and programming, and I think you will too, is that unlike an experiment where you've got multiple weeks going into it, and if you did something wrong, at the very beginning, your results might be completely invalid 2 weeks later. With programming, you tend to be able to try something and get very quick feedback on it. And this very short feedback loop is kind of addictive and really fun in many ways. But it's really easy to rework your ideas and rethink them. If you build a house or a large building, it's hard to imagine what it might look like with a different foundation. But with programs, you can restructure the way they work, and it's much easier to work with than most other media, especially that are physically based in objects in the world. And so this is one of my favorite quotes of Fred, who, as I mentioned, was the founder of the UNC CS department. I like to call him the OG of UNC computer science. Another series of quotes that I really enjoy that I feel like frame out what computer science is all about. To me, programming is more than an important practical art. It's also a giant undertaking in the foundations of knowledge. And this quote is from Dr. Grace Hopper, who was one of the early inventors of programming languages and is a world-renowned computer scientist and an admiral in the Navy. And I think what you're going to come to appreciate in this course is that very much so, the work that we do in data science is about foundational knowledge and teasing out more insight and understanding in the data that we're collecting in the world around us. And so this is something that I think really echoes in the data science work that we'll be doing in this course and you'll relate to. Another quote that I like that is less about, the skills or the ideas of computer science and more about sort of, I think, what is a general sense of the culture and the feelings of computer science. If you've got a good idea and it's a contribution, I want you to go ahead and do it. There's no sense in waiting for permission. It's much easier to apologize than it is to get permission. And this is sort of a mantra that I think many of us in computer science like to believe we adhere to, and that we don't really want to be a hierarchical, patriarchal discipline. We really want people to have ideas, pursue them, and try and hopefully make the world a better place. Sometimes we don't, and that's why we're going to be looking at social issues in computer science this semester. All right. So let's actually talk about some a little bit more concrete, a concrete concept here. That's just a little bit of trying to get the framing of the feel and sort of the spirit of computer science. Now let's look at what is the fundamental pattern in our field. And this isn't just unique to us. This is something that you'll see in many other fields as well. And hopefully that transfer of knowledge will help it feel pretty approachable. When we think about programs and algorithms and problems that we're trying to solve, we tend to always start with our inputs. What are our raw materials? What is the data that we have available to us? What did the user just click on? Or what did they tap? What did they pinch their fingers on the phone? These are all what we think of as inputs. And these inputs are going to be fed into an algorithm. I mentioned previously, and we'll be talking about algorithms throughout this course, an algorithm is just a series of steps that a computer can follow. And what's really neat about an algorithm is that it's a fixed number of series of steps. So let's say your algorithm has 10 steps, but that algorithm should work whether or not you're feeding in a little bit of data or a lot of data. And even though the amount of data that an algorithm or the number of inputs an algorithm might vary, the algorithm itself is just the same set of instructions, right? And that's pretty cool. That means we can write algorithms once and have them work on data out in the real world or inputs out in the real world. And ultimately, the result of an algorithm, the output, is what we're looking for. And it should have some purpose, right? So when you apply a new Snapchat filter, the input is the camera, right? And actually on modern phones, it's also getting some depth sensing where there's the face detection on a modern iPhone, right, is shooting some infrared rays out, and that allows it to sense depth in a way that a camera can't in quite the same way. And it's combining those inputs, the what's coming in from your camera, from the depth sensor, and it's figuring out, well, the algorithm to say do a Snapchat filter is combining that and trying to figure out, okay, well, here's someone's eyes and here's where their head is, and now let's overlay some additional 3D components in this scene, and the result is like an awesome looking Snapchat filter that hopefully makes your friends or your mom laugh, because I know you're snapping your mom. So all of this winds up happening in an environment, right? So it's hard to think about an algorithm in the abstract. We also have to be aware that the code that we write is operating in an environment. In some contexts, this means like a larger program, but also this means in the world, right? The algorithms that you write are running in the world. And if they're making decisions about important things, we should be conscious of what kinds of impacts they have on the environment. And so some of the examples you'll read about later in this course are questions of fairness. How is looking at data about say the recidivism of inmates who might, based on some properties, be more likely to return back to jail or the criminal justice system after being released from jail. And some realization that, wow, wait, if we're basing that data on some faulty assumptions, then the effect that can have on the environment, on people's families, and on lives of those around them is actually significant, and we should concern ourselves with that. We won't spend most of our time thinking quite that broadly, but it's important to keep that in mind. More specifically, in the programs you write, we'll be worried about, what kinds of impacts does some code have on other parts of our program, perhaps unintentionally. And that's the environment that our program is running in. So this is how we like to think about the fundamental pattern. We've got some inputs. Those inputs feed into an algorithm that produces a result. And there's just no way around. Some algorithms are either going to be influenced by the environment and sort of their behavior might change based on what's going on in the world around it, as well as have some impact back out on the environment that isn't really the result that's intended by this algorithm, but is still important to think about nonetheless. So what I would encourage you to do as an exercise here is think about, in a field that you're interested in, perhaps in your major or somewhere else, where can you imagine the same type of pattern existing? I would encourage you to pause the video here and jot this down. You're not going to hand this in, but this sort of process of starting to think about what are the inputs, what are the types of steps that might go on in this process, and what is the intended result, and maybe a question of, is there some impact on the environment? And think about that for just a moment before we continue on. When I ask this question in other contexts, there's common responses. A lot of folks will think of chemical reactions or coming up with music or performing sheet music. So, the input is sheet music, and the algorithm is knowing how to read it and turning that reading of music into motions with your arms if you're playing, say, a stringed instrument, and the result being music. And sometimes that has an impact on the environment, like people start dancing, which is a great outcome, or maybe some people clear the room. Hard to know. So other examples include, there are lots of biological examples, photosynthesis. I'm sure yours is along these lines as well. But this type of thinking of, let's think about a problem and try and explicitly imagine what are the things that go into this process, and what is this process all about itself. This is computational thinking, and you'll be getting a lot of practice with it in this course. Oops. When we're moving through programs, we're going to see this pattern plays out in many different scales, from like individual lines of code that we write to our complete programs. And we've kind of already talked through this, so this slide is a little bit more for reference. I won't belabor these points. I think as Carolina students, you get the picture here, that this is a way of just being very specific about how we think about the various components of some process. And what gets to be fun as programmers is soon your results will start feeding into being inputs of other algorithms. And you can start building larger and larger structures and programs by combining these algorithms together and using results as inputs in different contexts. So another example that I like to use is, imagine these are your inputs. You've got some flour, you've got buttermilk, butter, salt, and baking soda, and an algorithm. a recipe. What do you get from this recipe? Well, if you're in North Carolina and that's the environment, it's probably going to be a little bit different than if you were somewhere else, like in England. In North Carolina, what you're going to get are Southern biscuits, which are one of the finest things that exist in this earth. And if you are new to the North Carolina area, I would encourage you to find some. Or if you're international, I want you to make a note and be sure when you arrive in Chapel Hill to seek out Southern biscuits. If you're in England, you might be getting scones out of these ingredients. All right. So with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about what's next in some of the homework that you can expect to be doing over the next couple days. So the first thing that you'll be working on is reading the syllabus. I as I mentioned, I skimmed over some of the high-level details that you need to know, big picture. But the devil really is in the details here, and it's worth understanding the details of what are the policies on late hand-ins, what is the grading scale breakdown, what percentage of your grade or quiz is worth, things like that. And so the homework for tonight and to be handed in by tomorrow night on Gradescope is read the syllabus and the support page on our course website, 21f.comp110.com. And there's a lesson that's posted on Gradescope. Again, it's due tomorrow night at 11:59. Every due date in this course is going to be 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on the day that something's due. And we have a little bit of a grace period for late hand-ins that's described in the syllabus, and you'll learn more about there. The next thing you're going to do is update your computer's operating system. And this is important because you don't want your machine to be out of date and to potentially have bugs or viruses that are different from what we're seeing in class. And it's good practice to keep your machine up to date. So the first set of steps that you'll move through is updating your machine. And you'll find those under, I think it's actually the resources section, but there's a link to it from the homepage as well. And then the required course software, you're going to need to install some programs on your machine in order to write programs. So you need some programs to write programs. That's kind of cool. And people that I used to work with actually are writing the programs that we're using to write programs. That's a little bit of a mouthful. But anyway, if you run into issues and you are on campus, we're going to be doing some in-person setup help. If you're remote and you're international, you're part of Carolina OA, we'll also have some hours, but I'm afraid that these hours are not going to be super conducive to you. So we'll be taking emails and hoping to schedule some more time if you run into issues updating your machines. If you're on campus, this will be happening in Sitterson Hall. The details will be posted on the course site. And it's going to be, again, tomorrow from noon to 5 p.m. If you get all the software installed and don't need any help, you can still come by and say hello, meet other people in the course, and meet some of the course staff. These are really friendly people. I love them, and I think you will too. Throughout the semester, I would encourage you to leave feedback on how things are going. This is a strange new world we're living in, where we've got one section of a course that is remote and asynchronous that you're in, and a section of the course that's in person, and it's the same content, the same exercises and assignments, but there are differences, and this is our first time trying something like this. So I think we're probably going to get some things wrong, and I'm hopeful that if we do, you'll let us know. Or if there are some ideas that you have for things that you think we could be doing better, please do tell us. This could be from as simple as in a video, hey, this was really too quiet, which hopefully at this point after COVID, I've gotten better at knowing to look for that, to suggestions on what might make the videos better, ways that we could build more community on campus or internationally. Any ideas that you have as we're moving through the course, please do let us know. There's a feedback form that can be found at the very bottom of every single page on the course site. In fact, I can show it to you real quick. So down here at the very bottom, Let me make this a little bit smaller. There's a link here, a feedback form. And it's a very simple form. Let me know your name, your email, and what feedback you'd like to leave. And we try and act on it. And we prefer that you give us the feedback when there is time to act on it, rather than saving it until the end of the semester, which it's still appreciated then, but you won't be able to benefit from the feedback you leave, although hopefully the people that come after you in future semesters of Comp 110 will. There will be some points throughout the semester where we'll do some class-wide feedback and just get a sense of how things are going, how the speed of the course is going, and just a general vibe for how we're doing in this sort of strange semester of still being in COVID, but feeling kind of like we're hopefully on the other side of it. We're moving in that direction. Our goal here, and this is not a spring goal, this is our fall goal. You'll notice that some of the times I'll be making some changes live, is positive vibes. And what do I mean by this? Well, in the fall of 2021, we're hoping to be optimistic. I've been walking around campus, and for those of you who are part of Carolina Away, you've probably seen images of folks, friends on campus or from the university, and the energy is palpable. It's really exciting to see Carolina actually back to life, and I'm hopeful that we navigate this in such a way that we can keep it in the form that it feels like it is right now, because it feels so good to actually be firing on all cylinders, having opportunities to work with people again in person, and that's pretty great. And this is unlike, a pretty painful and difficult 18 months behind us. I do think there's no way around. There are going to be some surprises. There will be some curveballs this semester. We're prepared to roll with the punches, but I think we're going to get through it, and it'll be great. So I encourage you to bring as much positive energy to the course and spread love in any way that you can. While interacting with the TAs and your peers in the course. We're going to be doing the same thing. This is something we're dedicating a lot of thought and energy to. And I think that's going to make this just a much happier and more pleasant experience than we saw last fall, for example, when things were frankly pretty dark. That being said, if you have negative experiences in this course that you specifically want to let me know about, I do have a grievances form set up. This is a COVID idea that came to us in last year. And the idea is this. There's a form that's separate from the feedback form that you can fill out. It's a grievances form. And they come directly to me immediately. I read them all. And if you would like a response, you have the option to leave your name and contact information, and I'll write you back, or we can get together, whatever it takes. You can submit these anonymously as well. But if something in the course, rubs you the wrong way, or you had a bad experience or something, please let me know about it. And don't burden other peers in the course who can't really fix it or do anything about it. Just let us know, and we'll do what we can to make it right. If a friend of yours in the course or someone else that is, complaining to you about something that doesn't feel fair or wrong or something like that, don't let them take you down. You can redirect them to the grievances form, and that will hopefully channel this energy towards me, and I can roll with it and try and make it right. So positive vibes, and the best way to get positive vibes is not to linger on upsetting things too long, not to let any problems fester, to get ahead of our problems, and to try and just work together in a spirit of coming together. So with that, I think that's the crux of what we wanted to get through. I do enjoy connecting on social media if you want. The most important medium here is YouTube. You're on it right now. And it's a little bit funny to be saying as a professor at UNC, please, like and subscribe to my channel. But you should primarily because this is where the videos will be posted. And as more content comes out this semester, it will be here. And so you'll be seeing a lot more from me on this channel. On Twitter, I tend to be posting about computer science related or education related subjects. Feel free to follow me there. My Instagram is pretty boring, but my Finsta is awesome. And I take a lot of pride and shameless pride in my dog Ada, who is pictured here, is now much larger. And I hope to have some, another thing I'm excited for is being able to bring Ada to campus. So if you are around campus, look out for Ada days. Otherwise, if you're part of Carolina Away, follow Ada Dog, oh my God, and you'll meet her at some point in the future. With that, I'm super excited to be getting this semester kicked off and to be back in the running here at UNC. We have a lot of really neat things planned for you this semester, and look forward to working with you and giving you the best introduction to programming we humanly can. So welcome to COMP110, and look to the course homepage for what to do next. Thanks.